Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling something that is so incredibly common, but honestly, it's almost never really understood. Have you ever noticed that for some of us out there, being 5 minutes early feels literally the exact same as being 10 minutes late? Picture this. You're sitting in your car, you parked a block away from the office or the coffee shop, and you're just staring at the dashboard clock. You've been sitting there for a solid 15 minutes, right? Just waiting for that exact socially acceptable moment to walk in so you don't look desperate. But inside, man, your heart is just racing. You're absolutely terrified of looking overeager or, heaven forbid, late. It's such a wild paradox. You are completely on time, but your body is acting like you're trailing behind in this invisible race.
And that contrast right there perfectly captures the double life of the chronically early person. To everyone else looking from the outside, you're just incredibly organized. You're the reliable one. Maybe they even call you a perfectionist, like you really have your life together. But internally, well, the reality is drastically different. Inside, there's this quiet, persistent tremor. It's an exhausting physical and mental state where arriving even 1 minute late, it isn't just processed as a logistical glitch. No, it is deeply felt as a visible failure. It feels like a character flaw that you're just broadcasting to the whole world.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. The quiet panic of punctuality. Why being early feels like a lifeline.
Once we move past that surface illusion of simple time management, we uncover that chronic punctuality is actually a highly tuned, anxiety-driven safety strategy. If you're this person, you intimately know this feeling. It's what we call pre-emptive panic. It's this constant, exhausting scan of your environment. But here's the crucial distinction, okay? You aren't scanning for physical danger. You're scanning for emotional disturbance. You are absolutely terrified of the heavy silence that follows a visible mistake. You're anticipating the sigh, that subtle shift in someone's tone, or a brief look of disappointment. You are literally managing a crisis before anyone else even realizes a crisis is possible.
Moving on to Part 2, the architecture of hypervigilance, the brain's protective mechanisms.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is that to truly grasp what's happening, we have to gently look at the really heavy psychological lessons your nervous system learned a long, long time ago. Your brain basically built this entire architecture, a whole set of protective mechanisms, just to keep you safe from emotional harm. Take hypervigilance, for instance. It's an elevated state of alertness that you use to prevent a problem before it ever even exists. The brain in this state treats a simple mistake like, say, hitting traffic and running 2 minutes behind, not as a mild inconvenience. No way. It treats it as a literal threat to your safety. Your body floods with stress hormones because it genuinely believes that if you slip up, the consequences are going to be emotionally catastrophic.
And when you're locked in that elevated state, your brain operates as a relentless meaning-making machine. It takes a totally neutral event, like the hands on a clock ticking past the hour, and it assigns this massive, devastating meaning to it. Why? Well, because somewhere along the line, you internalize the belief that no one is coming to step in if things go wrong. If you make a mistake, you are entirely on your own. There's no grace period, no safety net, you gotta be perfect, because deep down, you believe imperfection leads straight to abandonment.
Because of that underlying fear, being early basically becomes your emotional armor. It's the shield you strap on and wear out into the world every single day. This armor makes sure that you never ever give anyone a single reason to be disappointed in you. Because for the hypervigilant mind, disappointment isn't just a fleeting feeling. Early on, disappointment was inextricably linked to a loss of love, a loss of connection, or a loss of stability. So you're early because you are actively securing your right to be loved and accepted.
Which brings us to Part 3, the blueprints of childhood, where the parents began.
For so many folks walking around in this heavy armor today, the reality is they grew up in an environment where emotional safety just wasn't consistent. The mood of the house wasn't a given. It felt more like this invisible tension that you had to constantly navigate. You weren't really allowed to just be a kid, right? You were more like a tiny emotional meteorologist, constantly trying to predict the weather of the adults around you. In that kind of unpredictable environment, you didn't learn how to freely express yourself. Instead, you learned survival strategies, staying quiet, staying small, managing adult reactions. You learned to carefully curate your entire existence so you'd never accidentally tip the scales of an adult's fragile mood.
It really all boils down to the quiet panic of a child who learned to be low maintenance. Being on time, being out of the way, having your shoes tied, and waiting by the door 10 minutes early. Honestly, this wasn't about being a quote-unquote good kid. It was a coping mechanism. It was a way to avoid becoming an inconvenience to a highly unpredictable world. It was your way to just simply feel okay, to dodge someone else's frustration, and to carve out a tiny, safe corner in a chaotic house. Now for part 4, the cost of being reliable, the toll of constant anticipation.
Fast forward to today. Now you're the adult. You're the one everyone counts on, the one who never drops the ball. But the toll of this constant anticipation is just immense. Your inner world becomes this storm that absolutely refuses to settle. You might be physically sitting in a chair, perfectly on time, smiling, looking completely relaxed. But your mind is stuck in what psychologists actually call anticipatory withdrawal. You're constantly replaying past conversations, you're scanning current tones, you're hyper-focused on microscopic shifts in body language. You are doing all of this heavy emotional lifting just to make absolutely sure you're still allowed to be there.
Over years and decades, living like this creates an overwhelming sense of identity fatigue. It's this deep, deep weariness where you might actually start feeling a bit more like a function than a fully fleshed out human being. It's as if your primary role in life is just to serve the moods and schedules of everyone else. Think about it. When you've spent so much of your life constantly adjusting your emotional volume to make other people comfortable, it is incredibly easy to lose track of your original shape. You just haven't had the luxury of being yourself, mostly because you've been way too busy being exactly what everyone else needed you to be. So, let's transition to part 5, letting go of the clock. Moving from survival to healing.
So, the crucial point is, how do we actually transition from merely surviving all of this to true healing? Well, it starts with immense self-compassion. The adult who is carrying all this anxiety today is simply trying to protect the little child who originally felt it. But here's the truth. You are no longer that small child in that unpredictable house. Healing really takes root when we look at our reactions, like that racing heart in the parked car we talked about earlier, and clearly label them for what they are. They are outdated protective mechanisms. The goal here is to create a gap between your past and your present. You want to reach a place where the past stops dictating every single move you make today. It needs to become a reference book on your shelf rather than the author actively writing your current story.
To make that shift, we literally have to change the way we speak to ourselves. For years, you've probably looked in the mirror and asked this punishing, intensely self-critical question. Why am I like this? Why can't I just relax like everyone else? But that question, it just keeps you trapped in a cycle of shame. The real growth begins the exact moment you stop interrogating yourself as if you've committed some sort of crime.
And this brilliantly illustrates what we need to do instead. We have to replace that punishing question with an empowering one. Ask yourself, what can I become now that I understand it? You see the hidden architecture now. You see the blueprints. So guess what? You get to redesign the building. By asking this new question, you empower yourself to finally take up space in the world without having to endlessly earn it first through perfect punctuality and zero mistakes.
I really want you to hear this clearly. You are allowed to be imperfectly human. The world is not going to fall apart if you hit a traffic jam. You will not be unloved just because you walked in 5 minutes late. Your worth is not some score tallied up by how little of an inconvenience you are to the people around you. You no longer have to be enough for everyone else's unpredictable moods. You just have to be real. As we bring this explainer to a close, I want to leave you with a final pivotal thought. I want you to look inward today and ask yourself, does being early feel like a choice for you, or does it feel like a shield? Recognizing that difference is the very first step toward reclaiming your peace. I invite you to reflect on your own hidden architecture, share your stories with us, and finally, give yourself the permission you've always deserved to step out from behind the clock. Thanks for learning with us today.